joining us from now on, in fact.
I hope so. We'll see.
Good.
We'll see what we can do.
Today's topic is going to be, of course, Mother's Day. And what other way to celebrate Mother's Day than to talk about the famous mothers in filmed media, whether it be motion pictures, television, or even on the web.
Yep.
So let's start off by talking about the positive images of mom.
The good stuff.
The
good ones.
That's so unusual to come from me, isn't it?
From you, yeah.
Yes.
That's very unusual.
So Michael, when you were growing up, what moms on TV or in movies did you find to be the most inspirational?
Oh wow, that's a good one. You know what? The two that automatically stand out, and that's just because of, I guess, the era that I grew up in. I guess to watch whatever, but the first one would be the mom from Fresh Prince, Vivian Fox, yeah, or Aunt May. Well, to him, Aunt May, but the mother in the show. That was a good one. I liked her a lot, even though they switched her out mid. I want to say like the actress they switched her out. I want to say like third season or fourth season. Like we wouldn't notice. Totally different mom, but whatever. And Mrs. Summers from Buffy the Vampire Slayer, also a really cool one. I enjoyed, and Sarah Connor, also from film, definitely a big one for me as well. Yeah,
From the Terminator series.
from the Terminator series, yes, the one and only.
Actually, I'll be honest with you. That was one sensational mom. Look
Right?
at what she did in order to protect her son.
Exactly. She went from this almost the complete transformation from film 1 to film 2, this meek sort of like, oh well, whatever, survivor, and then to from the first film with before John was born, and when Schwarzenegger was just still a killer and a Terminator trying to kill him, and then that transformation into what she became in the second one. So it was kind of cool to watch that sort of like arc and that transition as well.
Well, what I found really interesting about that is that James Cameron seems to have an interesting view of moms.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah, he does.
look at how much of a maternal instinct he gave Sigourney Weaver in Aliens.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because when we think of the original Alien movie, yes, we got the sense that Sigourney Weaver might have some female attributes, and maybe she and Tom Skerritt were doing a little bit of the naughty while everyone else was asleep. but by and large, we didn't get that maternal sense. And here we go in Terminator 2, in Aliens, where all of a sudden she's the super mom. She has that maternal instinct with Newt, and that sad scene when she realizes that her own daughter died older than she is now.
Yeah. Actually, that's a good like phrase or to quantify that character. It's like it's like Supermom, Sigourney Weaver in one, and then Terminator in the other. Yeah, it's the Supermom. Yeah.
And even if we look at stuff like Titanic, you didn't necessarily have a positive direct mother figure, but you certainly had a woman that we all wanted to have as mom, which was Kathy Bates.
That's true.
Playing Molly Brown.
Yeah. Also a good one.
So, and Sigourney Weaver again as a motherly figure in Avatar.
That's right. Wow, James Cameron really likes to bring them
He does.
Wow, okay.
He does.
Interesting.
Either he had
I
a
forgot
great
about
mother
that.
or he just had the most awful mother ever. That's all
It's
I
one
can
or
think
the other.
of.
Yeah, it can't be. Yeah, it's definitely not in the middle. Interesting.
Well,
Okay.
Well, certainly when I was growing up, way before you guys, I had all sorts of TV moms who were very unusual. I mean, on the one hand, we had moms like Lucy Ricardo, who, even though she was a mother, still wanted to have her own career, still wanted to have her own identity. And I got to tell you, as a little Asian kid growing up, I looked at that and thought, wow, she didn't have to be what everyone told her she had to be. And she certainly wasn't any Donna Reed or Jane Wyatt from Father Knows Best. Maybe, I don't have to be an accountant or a doctor or some other pointy-headed Asian thing.
That's actually a good reference. I remember watching, because I actually recently went back and watched a few more than a few of those episodes from the first and second season, and I'm sitting there watching this and I'm looking at this like, this was what year? 1950?
1951.
1951, and Lucille Ball is portraying this woman who, like you said, is not listening to the stereotypes and whatever, but more importantly, in the comedy, if you really watch it, is honest about a lot of the stuff like her life and kind of like what it's like to be a woman in, you know, the 50s and whatever. And I'm just like, wow, this is so ahead of its time. I don't even know like how to kind of process that in 1951.
Well, I think this is the reason why, in terms of reruns from the 50s, even The Honeymooners isn't really all
No.
that ubiquitous anymore.
No.
But I Love Lucy
No.
is still around.
Because it's relevant. It's still relevant. It's crazy.
It's certainly very preferable to me to this view of suburban life, which I always found to be kind of hellacious, that you would see in Leave It to Beaver. I got to tell you, if I ever came home and saw my mom in pearls and high-heeled shoes baking cookies,
Yeah.
I would have absolutely run out of the house screaming, because I would have figured a pod person had taken her over.
I think I would have done the same if I seen my mom do that. That would be a little weird.
Although I do admit, the mom that I thought was the coolest was Samantha Stevens, because
Bewitched,
she could just
yeah.
yes, because she could just wiggle her nose and make anything happen.
Yep, Bewitched.
But I got to tell you that in terms of Bewitched, and I'd like your opinion on this, because you're more or less a white guy, so it's very different for you from us. But I look at Bewitched, and I am so on the mother-in-law's side. I am so on Endora's side in that, because
Interesting.
if my daughter had married a guy who did everything in his power to squash what made her special, what gave her talent, what made her more powerful than him,
Yeah.
I would have decked him too. I would have been trying everything in my power to make sure that they got split up and that she realized what a loser she was attached to.
But then there'd be no conflict in the show if that weren't the
I
case.
know.
If he completely supported her in every endeavor and you're supposed, there'd be no conflict.
That's true. But
From a writer's standpoint, is what I'm saying, from that context.
But I gotta tell you, it's one of the reasons why when I watch Bewitched today, I find it difficult, because Endora, who's someone that I just totally champion, is positioned as an antagonist or a villain.
Yeah. Yeah, no, well, but see, that's funny because yes, she is the antagonist in that situation, but it's funny because it's coming from the place that you just said. It's coming from a protective mother standpoint, not from, oh, I just hate this person and I just want to outright, I want him out of her life and whatever. No, it seems like she's genuinely on some level just trying to protect her daughter. Like, that's it.
Well, I find the other thing is, not only does she protect her daughter, but she respects her daughter's decision.
Yes.
Even though she keeps trying to convince her, Samantha, that Durwood is not the right guy for her, she doesn't really interfere with their marriage all that much.
Yeah.
I think of other evil mothers from that same time period, such as the mother in the movie A Summer Place, who's actually actively scheming against her son-in-law.
Yeah.
So I definitely find Endora to be a mother to admire. The other mother that I used to admire on TV was Wheezy Jefferson. Because I got to tell you, I had a thing for Isabel Sanford.
Interesting. I didn't know you even watched that show. That's
Please, that was my favorite show. I couldn't get enough of Florida, not Florida, of the maid. What was the maid's name?
God.
Marla Gibbs played her.
Yeah.
And I couldn't get enough of their repartee and how that show absolutely nailed the socioeconomic differences, and how, in spite of the fact that Louise Jefferson was now really high up in the world, that she still had that ability to connect to her son on a regular mom level. It's not as if she was turning her kids into dilettantes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was actually a role model on what can happen when you become rich and yet you still maintain the qualities that made you human.
Well, see, that's exactly why I liked Fresh Prince so much, and the mom in Fresh Prince, because that's exactly what she did just in the 90s as opposed to, during the 70s.
Right.
And a big part of that was just exactly what you said. It always seemed like, well, they talk about it in the show, but it was obvious that they initially at least didn't come from money. It wasn't like they were born into money, into this mansion, whatever. They had actually worked really hard to get to that point. And or struggled to get to that point. They mentioned that more than once, but the way that the character, the way she portrayed that, she played that very well. Like it made you just, even without them saying that, you knew like they appreciated where they were at, and she in turn tried to instill that in her kids as well.
The other mother, and ironically a Norman Lear mother, that I always found to be completely admirable was Edith Bunker from All in the
Really?
Family.
Okay.
Because initially she was portrayed as a dingbat, and we took Archie's definition of her, and we took Gloria's definition of her as a woman who is completely locked into the wrong mindset. But then, about season 3, Norman Lear realized that no, or maybe Gene Stapleton forced him into this decision. I don't know, but somewhere along the line, you started seeing that what Edith was doing was she actually had a realpolitik vision of marriage, that she knew how to fight the battles when they were important. And when she tried to explain that to Gloria, Gloria all of a sudden had a light bulb go off in her head. And it helped Gloria to understand not only her parents, but also her role as a mother, and how she had to be more open to the vagaries of life and deal with the world the way it was, not the way she wanted it to be, which is why ultimately her husband deserted her, because Mike lived in a world of theory and academia, not responsibility.
Yeah.
Where, look at Archie. Archie took care of this whole family of 4 people on one salary. And
So he had every right to be as curmudgeon as
he certainly did, and that's why All in the Family today is such a shocking show to watch, because you look at it and you see just the level of what people took on as being what they had to do, and yes, they had their flaws. Archie, in terms of his bigotry, although his bigotry was all verbal, we never really saw it in action, and in fact, even when he was challenged with transvestism, with African Americans moving next door, dealing with his wife, we saw that his words did not match, that he was actually a good man. And with Edith, we saw that her actions temporarily might seem on the surface to be very, very servile and not necessarily smart, but the more we watch the show, the more we realize she was the true intellectual of the bunch. Because she knew human nature, and she knew how to play it. And when push came to shove in terms of economics, because she kept the family together, it was clear that she was keeping the books. That when it came to her knowing how to manipulate Archie at the right moments, like the day he wanted a TV set, and she convinced him, was she worth I think it was $2 a week, because he was upset about the money she'd spent on this TV. And he said, yeah, you're worth $2 a week. And she pointed out, okay, well, then you've paid for the TV, because I figured out the number of weeks I've worked for you as your wife. So we saw that she had that gift. Now, here's another question that's a little bit touchy, but I thought I'd better bring it up anyway.
Go ahead.
As both of us are people of color, so to speak, what was your take on the Brady Bunch?
Oh, God. Wow. That's a tough one, because it's 2 levels. On one level, you see, in a kind of whitewashed way, the integration of kind of the seeds of like the integration of like a broken family, so to speak, or like 2 families who divorced or died or widowed or whatever coming together. So that was interesting to see that. I don't know if I'd seen a show or even a film quite like that just yet, where with the exception of like a Freaky Friday or something like that later on, but in that situation, 2 families coming together and then being forced to like get along, like step family, whatever. So on that level, it was kind of interesting to watch. But on the other level, which the problems that they had weren't they never really, I don't know if they really ever really talked about that. I don't know. I don't remember many episodes where they actually addressed those issues. Oh, this is weird that I have to live with my stepbrother now, or this is weird I have to live with my stepsister, or whatever. I can't remember that. I don't know if they talked about that or not.
Well, I'll tell you one of the things that I took away from the Brady Bunch. I remember seeing that show and being eternally grateful that I didn't live in that family.
Yeah.
Because I found that Carol Brady was not a great mom.
Interesting.
She was very into being very fashionable looking, to pretending to help people around the house, but really being ineffectual in terms of giving any kind of real advice, giving even strong emotional support. Now, this is not a knock on Florence Henderson. I don't know where it stems from, but I felt that if I was one of those kids, that I would really look at Alice as my mom more than Mom.
Oh, totally. Absolutely.
I would look at Mom as being this kind of rent-a-mom who would come in and play checkbook generosity between her visits to the health club and to her women's club and to whatever social organization she was working with, but she didn't seem engaged with the family all that much.
Interesting. Okay.
And ironically, it also seemed that the dad was the one that the kids went to whenever there was an emotional problem.
See, that's what I remember too. Is whenever something happened, who do you go to for advice? You go to the dad. That was really interesting. The way that dynamic worked.
Yeah, so the Brady Bunch, even though I enjoyed watching it, and I enjoyed fantasizing that this could have been my life, I ultimately was happy I wasn't, because when I was going to Braddock Elementary in Washington, D.C., I had a couple of neighbors who were living the Brady Bunch life, and I knew what was really going on there, and it was not all peaches and cream.
Oh, of course not.
Yeah,
of course not.
So that was another. I would say that Carol Brady, for me, registers as an okay mom rather than a good mom.
Okay.
But Alice in that show, I would have registered as a great mom.
Strong, great woman. Yeah, no, absolutely. Even though, yes, of course, she was the maid, but no.
Well, as a maid, I gotta say that it also shows just how rich California was at that time and how creepy their house is. Because if anyone's ever seen that house in real life, it is a single story, and that what looks like a second story bedroom window, it's actually the vent for the garage. So, and if you think about that house and you think about the movie Rosemary's Baby, they have a big similarity in that the way that the rooms are laid out doesn't make sense in terms of the way the house looks. So you always look at that at the living room and go, where are these bedrooms? Where did they go in terms of the geography? So the interior of that house doesn't fit in the exterior.
Interesting. But do you think that was just like them trying to get away with a setting, like the set, or was that?
Oh, it was
like
just on TV. They knew nobody would pay attention.
So no one pay attention. Okay, cool. So just a general like, oh, no one will notice that this doesn't lead anywhere.
No one will notice that a 1,000 square foot house on the exterior is somehow 2,500 square feet on the interior.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
In terms of other mothers, I've got to tell you that I'm looking at yet another Norman Lear show, and there was a mom in that. I'm sorry, I'm stuck in the 70s, but that's when I was from. Called Maude, and that had B. Arthur playing a mom, and she was a very liberated woman, and she was very caustic. And I find that today, watching episodes of Maude, even though B. Arthur is great, much more so than I felt that she was in Golden Girls, I find that show unwatchable. Have you ever seen an episode?
No.
It's almost a celebration of what happens when you have a mom who's more interested in saving the world than taking care of her kids.
Interesting.
She has a husband, and I think he's not supposed to be her first husband. I think he's like a third husband, who's totally henpecked and is one of those people that you can't believe in real life was in the original version of O Calcutta. And you have her daughter, played by Adrienne Barbeau, who was a Playboy centerfold, and yet you're looking at her and saying, really, we can't imagine you ever having let a man have sex with you, much less to have a kid, much less to have a kid who's even, albeit divorced, as non-neurotic as Adrienne Barbeau is in that show.
Interesting. Well, I loved Golden Girls, so that's my frame of reference for B. Arthur. But yeah.
Well, Golden Girls is interesting because I think they were all mothers in that.
I don't remember that. That's a good question. I don't remember if they. I don't think so. I don't. Well, her daughters. I don't remember. Were they? Did they have kids? I don't think they did because they never. I don't remember them ever showing up.
They might not have shown up, but I thought they referenced them. This is something I don't remember.
Yeah, me neither. Okay. I need to go
So I
back
might
and
have to
watch
turn
it.
in my rerun card.
Yeah, I might have to go back and watch that. But yeah, I don't remember episodes where they showed up or even just referenced like, oh, I had, oh, my son doesn't ever visit me, or oh, my daughter doesn't, I don't remember any of that.
An interesting comparison that I once did in a classroom was that I compared the family unit that we saw in Beverly Hills 90210, the 90s version, and the Waltons, which was a Depression-era TV show that was on the opposite end of the socioeconomic spectrum. And we're doing a comparison of whether or not, in terms of television logic, growing up poor or growing up rich was better.
Oh, well, okay, I have an answer for that. In
Yes.
TV logic, at least, or in the TV land, TV realm. No, of course well, okay, it depends on what your definition. It's subjective because it depends on your definition of better is. Better as in you want a better family or better friends or whatever, poor. But if you want the toys and the things and you don't really care if your parents are around and they're on whatever Aruba trip or whatever, cruise they're on this week, then yes, you want to grow up rich. A la your 90210 Dylan, whose parents never were around, and he could just kind of do whatever he wants. And
Well, his dad would play basketball with him every now and then.
Well, exactly, yeah. His dad was a friend, not an actual father. But that's what I mean. It's just if you don't want your parents to be around, you go 90210. But if you want some kind of semblance of a family unit, you go poor, a la the Waltons.
Now, in terms of feature films, there seem to be specific eras when mothers go in and out of fashion.
Okay.
And by that I mean there's eras where mothers are championed, and we see things like It's a Wonderful Life, or Meet Me in St. Louis, or nice or any kind of nice little story about a family that's dealing The Blind Side, where you have these very, very maternal figures. But these are often counterbalanced by eras where we see the mother almost vilified. And we've seen some real amazing eras where it seemed like every single mother was sociopathic. And I find the worst era of that the late 70s and the early 80s.
Had to be easily.
And I don't know whether that was from backlash against feminism or whether it was just a societal trend, but there just seemed to be a bunch of mothers who were monstrous. The primary one, of course, is the depiction of Joan Crawford in Mommy Dearest. But the depiction of Joan as this abusive personality, in retrospect, yes, it's grandiose and over the top, but her psychological torture of her child is I don't think nearly as bad as what Mary Tyler Moore was doing in Ordinary People, or Meryl Streep did in terms of psychological damage and uncaring about her kids in Kramer versus Kramer. And even the ultimate feminist movie, An Unmarried Woman, which I wish more people would be familiar with today, because in terms of showing how you can make a movie without a straightforward narrative and to play with just finding the truth in a character, Jill Clayburgh's great in it. But as the mother, there are moments when you can see that she has neglected her daughter. And she makes up for it, and yes, they sing the song "Baby I'm a Man, Baby I'm a Lonely Man" together at one point, so it was kind of cute, but that era was extremely toxic, and it went on for a very long time. It included movies like Terms of Endearment, where again we had this terrible mother played by Shirley MacLaine, and I actually think that particular era of semi-toxic moms carried through to Postcards from the Edge, where we had Shirley MacLaine again playing a monstrous mom toward Meryl Streep.
And that, I want to say, I feel like that would have lasted well into the 80s, right? I mean, like almost.
No, we're talking from 70. I think this stretched from 78 to about 92, and then woman basically disappeared from movies. Period.
Yeah, well,
that was it.
That's the totally different story. Yeah. stuff like. Well, see, it's funny because from that era, I always remember like Throw Mama from the Train,
Yes.
stuff like that. You know.
And look at that mother.
Yeah.
Anne Ramsey was a really monstrous creature in that. Not only physically, but in terms of the way she was treating Billy Crystal. It was wow.
To have to hire Danny DeVito. Yeah. Absolutely. And what was the other one? Bloody Mama. That was the other one.
Oh yes, that was 1971. Shelley Winters.
Shelley Winters. Yep.
Actually, in terms of people who've made out of a career out of being just absolutely the most awful mom you could imagine, I can't think of anyone other besides Shelley Winters who made that such a career trope. Patch of Blue. She's got a blind daughter and just totally tortures her. Lolita.
Yep.
Where because she's so hot for James Mason that she willfully disregards the fact that he's hot for her daughter. Diary of Anne Frank, where she's so set on her own selfishness about her mink coat and all of that, and yet she steals food to give to her husband while her kids are starving, while her kid and the Frank are both starving. We also see her in not only Bloody Mama, where she plays Mom Barker, who has clearly incestuous relations with two of her kids. She also played Mommy in Cleopatra Jones, she wasn't a real mother in that, but she's a queen pin of a drug empire fighting against Cleopatra Jones. And in the Poseidon Adventure, she plays what can only be described as an overbearing grandmother. And we sense that when she dies, because of the way she's been throughout the movie, that maybe the reason she hasn't seen her grandchildren yet is because her kids couldn't take her. So yeah, Shelley Winters was definitely a grandma mom. And again, Shirley MacLaine, another perfect, problematic mother.
Transpose that to what is it, like I want to say the early 2000s, something like that, with a Kim Basinger in 8 Mile. I don't know if you saw that or not, but
No, I haven't seen 8 Mile.
oh, the entire story is basically loosely based on the rapper Eminem's life. And where he portrayed.
Excuse me, I did see it.
Yes. So the way that she's portrayed is like, oh, so this is what you really think of your mom. Okay. Got it. As if the music wasn't already bad enough, and the references that he makes in his music as to how terrible she is. Got it. Okay.
It's interesting also to see the personas on screen of stars in real life and how a lot of times their relationships with their kids in the real world were reflected on the screen. Chief among those, I believe, was Lana Turner. Now, Lana Turner was never going to be someone who would win Mother of the Year. Always a sex pot in Hollywood, always having very, very dramatic love affairs, thrown down the stairs by one husband, slapped in public by another. And really someone whose rather cold on-screen persona was definitely not in sync with her torrid private life. Although now when you look at her performances, she holds up really well because she knew how to pull back. She and Elizabeth Taylor are great at passing the test of time because their very lack of artistry makes them feel real.
Interesting.
But with Lana Turner in 1957, she was having a relationship with a gangster named Johnny Stompamato, and allegedly during the course of one of their battles, her daughter came running into the room and stabbed Johnny Stompamato and killed him. Hollywood, never one to let a good scandal go to waste, immediately put that story on screen with Lana in 3 movies. We had Peyton Place, based on the notorious Grace Metalius novel, where she plays a mother who had an illegitimate daughter and has covered up that fact for a number of years. And then the daughter finds out and literally never wants to see her mother again because she feels she's been taught a lie. And in one of the film's it must have been uncomfortable for Turner. The mother says, well, what will you do if you go to the big city? And the daughter turns and says, I'll live off some man the way you did. But not to be outdone by that, what's her next movie? It's Imitation of Life. And Imitation of Life is definitely a movie that, if you're looking at depictions of motherhood, is an absolute criticism of every type of motherhood around. Have you ever seen Imitation of Life?
I have not.
It's a story about a white mother who's really interested in becoming an actress.
Okay.
And one day at a beach, she meets an African-American woman who has a very, very light-skinned daughter. And they become best friends. And Lana Turner ultimately does become a big star. And in the process, completely ignores her daughter. So her daughter, by age 16, is this little chirpy, annoying Sandra Dee who starts falling in love with Lana Turner's boyfriend in that, John Gavin. Meanwhile, Juanita Moore, the African-American mother, has a daughter who can pass for white and does. She does not want to be African-American at all. So on the one hand, we see a mother who's neglectful. We see another mother who's very involved with her daughter, and her daughter doesn't want her there. So we get this polar opposite view of motherhood, where Susan Kohner wants Lana Turner as her mother, and Sandra Dee wants Juanita Moore as her mother. Yeah. So it was it's a very strange movie to watch for that.
Interesting. What about, okay, so...
Oh, and then she did Madam X, where she plays a woman who murders someone and has to be defended by her son who doesn't know she's his mother. So yes, Lana Turner really did a good job of using her real life as a springboard.
Interesting. Yeah, because I can't remember... After that era, I can't remember any, with the exception of a few, all the moms that I remember, at least from my era or the 90s or whatever, were all TV moms. I can't remember too many film moms from the 90s that really stood out.
I'll be honest with you. I think that motherhood was very lacking during that era. It was really mostly single, single people, double income, no kids. And their actions, or Flying Glass No Brainer movies.
Yep, I would agree.
Was
and in many cases,
was Bonnie Bedelia in Die Hard? Was she a mother? Yes, because Bruce Willis at the beginning is buying a toy for the kid. So, but you
only see her in the first film.
We only see her in the first film, and in the first
film,
the
first film wasn't even until, wasn't it like 89?
89.
Yeah. So after that, like I said, in the 90s, nothing.
Yeah, you know what? I'm not coming up with anything other than James Cameron.
I'm trying to figure out what. Yeah, with the exception that I think that's why for me Sarah Connor stood out so much, because there was nothing. There was, aside from the fact that obviously she's an icon, there was nothing else in that realm that kind of like stood out as well. So I think that was part of it. Why she popped so much.
The other interesting thing about mothers. Well, my favorite director, obviously, based on my age and everything else, Alfred Hitchcock.
Oh, yeah, he's a genius, of course.
And what's fascinating about Alfred Hitchcock is his view not only toward women in general, but toward mothers in particular. What Hitchcock movies have you seen?
I've seen North by Northwest, Psycho, Vertigo. What was a couple other ones? What was the other one? Traveler? Is that what I forgot? No, not the Traveler. Crap. From his British era when he was still in England.
39 Steps?
Yes, that was the other one. And
the first movie you mentioned is North by Northwest, and think about the mother character in that. It's Jessie Royce Landis. Yeah. And what does she do? She doesn't believe her son ever. And not only that, but she's willing to get him in trouble.
Yep.
They're in the elevator. He motions to her that the guys there are the criminals who are after him. And she turns to them and says, "You young men aren't trying to kill my son, are you?" And then
And
they
it's like, are you serious? What is wrong with you? Like, how awful. Oh, man.
But look at her in another Cary Grant Hitchcock movie, To Catch a Thief.
Yeah.
She plays Grace Kelly's mother, and in that one, she's someone who went from being poor to being fabulously wealthy. But yet she's maintained her poor and rather boorish behavior. Like there's a scene where they're at a dinner party and she's carrying on and wearing her diamonds and being very laissez-faire about it. And in a great moment, she takes her cigarette and stamps it out in an egg yolk. So we see the motherhood there being depicted very very callously.
Now, what about the most infamous one? And we all know from Hitchcock.
Norma Bates from Psycho. Well, there have been so many books written about Psycho and doing various interpretations of it. And Rothman's The Murderous Gaze about Hitchcock did some of the most interesting theorizing about that, because in the academic discourse on Psycho, you have people who say that Norman was always crazy and that he drove his mother to pushing him away. And he almost pushed her into the arms of the other man that he caught her with and then poisoned her.
Interesting. Okay.
But the majority of interpretations of it, this is all backstory, so who really knows?
Exactly.
Even Robert Bloch never covered this in his book. But in terms of the backstory, the other consensus is that it was all about the mother, that the mother was controlling of Norman, that she never let him move. She had her own vision of morality, and that it was almost an incestuous relationship. Look at Norman's room.
Yeah.
On the one hand, he has this dirty bunny rabbit, and on the other, he has the Eroica Symphony and pornography books. So we see that conflict that he had, that must have been associated with his mother being inappropriate with him. The movie clearly has that the mother was inappropriate with him, and
those hints of that, yeah.
Because when he's attacking the other woman that he murdered, because he murders 5 women in it apparently, and then Arbogast, the father figure.
Yep.
They point out that Norman's mother did not leave him alone. And we see that in the way that he attacks with vicious jealousy, not maternal jealousy, but sexual jealousy, whenever he takes on the mother's persona.
Well, I mean, even if you just look at it from, because that's the theory I subscribe to, and I think but here's the thing: is I've always wondered if there's a bias for me. If there's particularly for me, if there's a bias for me towards that theory, because I grew up with a mother who was overbearing. So I understand how that could probably drive you to want to murder someone. I understand that. And how that very much, and I mean, was 100% the reason why I moved out at 18. Like the second I turned 18 and the second I was a legal adult, I was, boom, gone. I was out.
Well, mothers and sons always have kind of a strange relationship.
Yep.
When the sons get right about that age when they want to leave, because that's when a lot of times mothers tend to become their most clingy.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. Totally. 100%.
And you see a lot of men who have never really been able to separate from that dominating mother figure on the screen. And we see it in the puer aeternus, the eternal boy figure in how many movies where you have a guy who's always lollygagging about, and it takes the heroine to almost become a surrogate mother to him in order for him to quote
leave,
unquote man up.
Yeah, or leave the nest or whatever. Yeah.
But going back to Hitchcock, some of the mothers that I found, in addition to Norma Bates, that were interesting, were the mother in Notorious, where you can tell that the mother was very upset that Claude Rains married Ingrid Bergman, and the mother takes an almost delight. There's that wonderful scene when Claude Rains comes to her and says, "Mother, I think I've married a spy." And you see this look of delight on her face when she realizes that her worst fears about her daughter-in-law have come true, and now she's going to get the chance to try to poison her.
Yep.
Or look at Lydia in The Birds, where we have Jessica Tandy playing this mother who won't let go of her son, Rod Taylor, even though he has very desirable women around him, whether they be Suzanne Plachette, really sexy in that, not unlike what she would become in the Bob Newhart show later, and Tippi Hedren, who we sense also had a mother issue, that she's so fixated on daddy that somewhere along the line she lost her mother.
See, so that's interesting. So, did anyone has it ever been delved into as far as Hitchcock himself and like what his relationship was with his mother?
We get the sense that Hitchcock grew up in a working class home where there wasn't a lot of love. It was all about survival, survival, survival.
Interesting.
And he was always a bit of an outsider, and certainly someone who spent his entire life with Alma Revel, who was hardly a sex icon. So, and yet he was surrounded by the most beautiful woman in Hollywood.
Yeah. Clamoring, by the way, to
And we saw that frustration erupt in the way he treated a lot of the actresses, whether it be Grace Kelly or most notoriously Tippi Hedren, when he really pushed himself on her.
Yep. Interesting. Very interesting.
So what are some of the memorable mothers that you've seen on the screen?
That I've seen on screen, like film.
And one way or another, did you want them to be your mom, or your mom to be more like them, or maybe they were memorable moms because you were so glad your mom wasn't like them?
On the one hand, that's why I'm going to go a little bit back to the Sarah Connor, because on the one hand, I did see some similarities because the way I grew up is a little different. Single mom, raising two kids. So the whole survival, having to basically put up with a terrible child, which was me. And trust me, I will cop to that any day. I know that I was more than a handful. I understand that. And how she didn't take a pillow and just smother me in my sleep when I was a teenager, I don't know. So that if that's not love, I don't know what is. But with Sarah Connor, I think that's why another reason why she popped out so much is because she is that super mom who would do anything for her kids. And to me, at least now, after leaving the house and, doing my own thing, I can kind of look back on that and go, oh, okay, she was closer to that than Miss Bates. Than I don't know if that makes sense, but than the such overbearing that it would turn me into a crazy psychopath. Like it was like I kind of understood where she was coming from at that point. So yeah,
I was always very thankful of my relationship with my folks because they were very Asian, so it was very hands off. It was. You were given tricks to perform, and you performed them. And if you performed them well, you were loved. And if you didn't, then you were pretty much banished to the prayer closet or something like that. No, my parents never did that to me. But certainly there was that sense that in Asian families that you earn your parents' love. It is not a birthright. And ironically, in Japanese cinema, we see this acted out.
Yeah.
Because in Western cinema, there's still an overall fetishism of moms, but in Japan, mothers are often positioned as being almost like servants, and they're the subject of melodrama, and or they're the subject of villainy. For example, a Japanese tragedy is all about a mother who goes through everything in order to protect her kids during the war, and at the end, she's basically left alone and dies.
Yep.
In Tokyo Story, we have a mother and a father who are still very old school and very traditional, coming to visit their kids, and their kids can't be bothered with them.
Yep.
And when the mother dies, everyone is grief-stricken for all of 5 minutes, and then they realize they need to get back to Tokyo in their lives, with the exception of the daughter-in-law of their son who died during the war. And so you have, on that one hand, a mother being the perfect figure of tragedy. But on the other, you have the monster mothers in Japan. And the monster mothers there, especially in detective-oriented fiction, are unbelievably evil. In my favorite Japanese movie of all time, The Inugami Family, you have the story of a family where the patriarch dies and he leaves the most cockamamie will ever. And it turns out that the murders, I'm not spoiling this for anyone because if you haven't seen the movie already, it's 40 years old. And not only that, it's in Japanese, it's never been released in the US, so you're not going to see it. But it turns out that the woman who's the villain is the mother, because she was doing everything to make sure that her son, who had been disfigured during the war, would not only inherit, that was secondary, but she wanted him to be able to marry the beautiful girl, and she was willing to kill the other members of the family to do it. In another movie from the same series, you have a mother who starts killing her son's girlfriends because she knows the evil truth, which is that the man that she was married to actually slept with 3 other women in their small town, impregnated them all, and those are the 3 girls that he's interested in. And she doesn't want him to commit incest, so she murders them.
That's wow. That got dark really quickly.
Yes, it did.
Oof.
And then we have we have the whole we have women's liberation passing Japanese mainstream cinema by until the 80s. And there we have Itami Juzo, whose movies people should really try to see, which have women in their center, whether it be Tampopo, about a mother who does everything in her power to create her own business, which is a ramen restaurant, and help the kids out, or Minbo, the art of larceny, which is, well, she's not really a mother, she's just a strong woman. She's someone who goes after the Yakuza, but takes on a motherly role in teaching other people how to stand up to the bullies of the Yakuza. Very role modeling. I got to tell you that I wished I'd seen that movie before I went to college. Of course, it wasn't made at that time, and because it would have certainly helped me know how to deal with some of the vagaries of academia circa 1981.
It's actually interesting. You bring up some good points, at least within Eastern sort of filmmaking, and because in Western, more specifically Latin American filmmaking, it's the complete opposite. It's mom, parent, well, not just parents, but mom. It's a matriarchal, but it's so hands-on and overbearing. It's ridiculous. No woman is good enough for my son mentality. It's not even funny, and it's awful. She doesn't know how to cook. Okay, she's not good enough. Whatever. I mean, whatever you can.
Even though son is rich enough to hire a maid, right?
Basically,
or cook, yeah.
And one of the I think one of the I don't think he has issues in this regard, but Inarritu Gonzalez, the filmmaker, you can see that in not necessarily the way that Hitchcock portrayed women, but in one or two of his films, you can kind of see the melodrama with the mom and everything. In one of them, in particular, what's called the movie Amores Perros, you see kind of fetishizing the mom figure / older women in that. In it's kind of that coming of age sort of with the young men in there, and that portrayal of that. So that's actually really interesting to see that as well. But yeah, in definitely in Latin American cinema, mom is smack in the middle and always there, no matter what.
So can you talk a little bit about the role of motherhood in the telenovelas?
Oh my God, that's even worse. It is. How do you explain for people who haven't seen a telenovela or don't know what that is? It is a Spanish soap opera, and Spanish soap operas they make American soap operas look like tame, just absolutely the most tamest. It doesn't matter. Whatever. Take the worst American soap opera you've ever seen. Your Dallases, your Dynasties, or whatever. And those women are nothing compared to the women in these Spanish soap operas, and how evil some of them are, how manipulative they are, how it usually revolves around a couple of things. Either one, it's usually the son, and it's usually getting whatever woman, like I'm trying to remember a really infamous one, but God damn it, I can't remember. It's usually kind of a Dynasty or Dallas style where you have this rich family, with the mom at the center, and the son falls in love, of course, with the commoner, with the common woman or the poor girl or whatever.
Who lives next door and just got back from the convent.
Right, exactly. And so, exactly, Sister Mary Clarence, whatever. And it's usually some variation of that. And it's a really interesting look at not just the family dynamics, but also socioeconomic issues that Latin America tends to have. And the mom wants nothing to do with this little girl who's trying to marry off her rich son and move up socioeconomically, so to speak. Even though I don't want to say every time, but many times the girl is usually, her intentions are actually not manipulative. She just happens to fall in love with this guy, and he just happens to be rich. I'm sure that's a fantasy to most women or whatever, but at least with the character anyway, it doesn't seem like she has alternative motives or ulterior motives. But of course the mom doesn't see it that way. The mom is like, no, you're not good enough for my son. You grew up in the hacienda down the street, dirt road. No, thank you. Get out of here. It's usually something like that. Yeah.
So is there a difference between the telenovelas from the different Latin American countries?
Yes. There's subtle differences. You usually, the further south it tends to take place or filmed, or the story or whatever, the more you see the separation of socioeconomic status. The closer to the U.S., i.e. like Mexico, like if it's somewhere along that border or closer to that border, it actually tends to not be about rich people. It tends to be more about working class people and just surviving and how they deal with their situations and whatever. Versus when the further down you go towards like Central America to like, or even Argentina, Peru, whatever, where these countries tend to have more influence in terms of money, or tend to be better off. You do see the socioeconomic, the terror, the mom trying to keep the daughter from marrying her rich son. That tends to be how that's usually separated.
Interesting, because when I was working on American adaptations of telenovelas for a while, it seemed like the ones that were coming from Mexico were very oriented around males, where you would have two brothers who were trying to form a business, and then one of them would fall in love with a mafia daughter, and then the mafia don would come in and threaten them and all of that.
Yeah.
But the further south you went, you would have the ones about the daughter, once she marries the scion of the gigantic mansion next door, ends up having to do fist-to-fist battle with the...
a slap fight with one of the...
the mother-in-law.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. Yeah. Like it's and if you know anything about sort of the history and sort of what's the state of Latin America, so to speak, it's very obvious why those stories within those regions are the way they are. It's very, like, especially with Mexico, that it tends to center more around the working class / sort of male, I guess maybe more male oriented in that sense, for that exact reason, is because one, they deal with a lot of the drug issues and on the border and all of those sort of things. So the mafioso aspect or the organized crime aspect tends to get brought out in their stories, as well as the working class stuff.
Can you think of some movies that people should watch to see,
Or cartel stuff. Sorry,
to see different visions of motherhood that might be interesting? Just what are your favorites?
Within
No, within anything.
Within anything.
That you think people should see.
Oh, wow. One one interesting one, and it didn't happen until way later in the seasons, but Murphy Brown was an interesting one to watch. To watch the transition of this, I'm single and I'm, career oriented and, for so long, I want to say like 3 seasons or 4 seasons. And then right in that 3rd or 4th season, start to fall in love and have a baby. And then how she reacts to that. It's kind of interesting.
The other show that was interesting that did that was Mad About You.
That went downhill though after the kid, in my
most
opinion.
Of the time it does.
Yeah.
Most of the time,
it wasn't funny anymore. It was
having a
terrible.
kid is a Hail Mary pass for a show that's dying, and they need to do something different because not every actress could do a puppy episode and say, okay, I'm going to come out as being gay the way Ellen did.
Yeah.
The movie that I think, one of the movies that I think people should see at some point is Now Voyager. Now Voyager is a 1942 film with Bette Davis in it, and it's remembered as being a romance. It's actually not at all. It is the most unromantic movie ever made, although you would never believe it by the way it presents itself on the surface, especially not with its Max Steiner score. But it's all about Bette Davis, who's been kept down by her mother. Her mother forces her to be fat, forces her to wear glasses, forces her to wear unattractive clothes, unlike any mother I've ever seen, especially from a rich family today. And it's all about how she separates from her mother, how she finds her own liberation through the wrong man. And then when she has an opportunity to take on a mothering role of her own, because we sense in it that she knows she's never going to be able to be a biological mom. She takes over Paul Henri's daughter and becomes the ideal mother for her.
Interesting.
And it's interesting because the way she's raising the daughter, I actually have a fear that the daughter's going to turn out worse. Because the daughter's going to grow up spoiled and entitled. Because she had someone come in like a fairy godmother in Cinderella. Another one, and this is going to maybe strike people as odd, is Mildred Pierce. Mildred Pierce is among people who aren't necessarily big Joan nuts, which is the phrase for people who are big Joan Crawford fans, tends to be the go-to movie for her, other than Mommy Dearest. But it's actually not a good movie about motherhood. And it's also not really that great a Joan Crawford movie, her Academy Award for it notwithstanding, because in it, she's terrorized by her daughter. Her daughter stands up to her constantly, and she does nothing. And I'm like, sorry, the Joan Crawford who in Queen Bee can drive someone to crash a car with her in it just to save the world from her, or the Joan Crawford who could become an axe murderess and thereby turn her daughter into an axe murderess, is not someone who's going to be terrorized by Anne Blythe. But it's still interesting to show how motherhood can be blind to the evils of the children. And the last big mother movie, I think, is Postcards from the Edge. Because we see how the choices that someone makes for their career have consequences, but you can make up for those consequences. It's all about moving forward from that point and picking up your responsibility when you can, and you can maybe make it okay.
Interesting. Can't think of any other films. I would say, from a film standpoint.
Or what TV show would you suggest people watch? How about Roseanne?
The only reason that I watched Roseanne or not, I mean, it was okay, but it's where Joss Whedon actually got to start. Joss Whedon wrote episodes for Roseanne, so and they were pretty good. Actually, the ones he wrote were pretty funny. So, yeah, that's a good one. No, totally a good one.
I'm wondering how Roseanne passes the test of time.
I don't think it does.
It took me.
I don't. I honestly, because I've seen like episodes like after, well after it's gone off the air. I don't think so. I don't know if it's gonna stick around.
It's always made me feel it was very grating.
Yeah.
Unlike Home Improvement, because Home Improvement, I didn't like at first, but I got to really like it by the time it went off the air, because of the way it presented all of the characters in it. They were very real in the sense that the world around them was nightmarish. Everyone around them was the worst cliche you could possibly imagine about them. And so as a viewer, you're watching it, and if you were a housewife who was trying to do better, but you realized you weren't as smart as you hoped, and you had a husband who was kind of dilettante, you understood it. If you were the guy who knew everything but who didn't have TVQ, and the idiot who did was always going to trump you. Yes,
poor Al. Oh man.
And if you were one of the kids and you had these crazy parents, of course you're going to be dysfunctional. And everyone has a neighbor who you find out little things about them and you realize, oh, maybe my neighbor is a hired killer for the CIA.
Yeah. Yep. Interesting. Yeah. Poor Al. Poor guy. Oh man.
I think the bottom line is that is that motherhood being something that we all deal with in the same way as romance, that it's not going to go away as one of the prime topics. And motherhood, because of feminism and whether it's first, second, or third wave, will always be looked at differently with different generations.
Yep.
And because of that, just knowledge of film history, knowledge of television history can lead to even greater enjoyment and greater insight into how we deal with our own mothers.
It's very true. Real quick before we have to go, because I know our producer is nodding his head. Do you have a story about your mom that's a good one, like one that you, when you think back, you're like, oh, that's the cherished kind of.
My mom?
Yeah.
I have too many to go into, but I'll give you one in particular.
Sure.
When I was growing up in Tokyo, and I was having a lot of trouble because as an American there, I was a little bit resentful of the fact we left Virginia and everything that I knew, and especially Money Movie 7 and the CBS Late movie, because everything on TV was dubbed. But my mom was persistent, and there was this movie that was a bad movie about a bad mother called Proof of the Man. It's all about how if you're now a successful fashion designer in Tokyo and you're married to a politician and the black son you bore during the occupation comes back to visit you, of course you're going to murder him. But in that movie, there's this wonderful poem called Mugiwara Boshi, and it's all about a boy losing his hat because it fell off his head and fell into the mountain, and how that reminds him of his mother's love and how he's remembering that part of his youth. And my mom and I watched the TV adaptation, which ran concurrently with the theatrical version. And that was when I was just learning Japanese. And she sat there and actually attempted to translate it for me, even though she wasn't that good with Japanese herself.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
So that's what mothers will do. They will fake it so their kids will get the benefit.
Yeah. That's incredibly true. Yeah.
Okay. Do you have any memories for us?
Yes. Like you, I have a lot. But unlike you as a child, I'm sure, growing up, I was a terrible child. So again, I don't know why or how she put up with me, but she did. And one of those times, let's just say, she caught on more than one occasion, she's caught me in, let's just say, a lewd act. And we haven't talked about it since, but that's okay. You just kind of let it go. But one of the things that I will always remember and love my mom for this, actually, is my love of films and the movies that I love are from her, actually. The ridiculous, terrible, well, not ridiculous, but the ridiculous, inappropriate humor comes from her. That's her. That's how I got that. It's like that. I know where that came from. And more importantly, and I will never forget this either, the two movies that I've watched with her that she loves, that I love, ironically enough, is Blazing Saddles. And actually, I watched Terminator with her. So my love of inappropriate humor, action films, and all kinds of other ridiculous things were because of her. I don't, to this day, I don't know if she loves those movies, like she actually genuinely loved those movies, or she just thought, no, this is my son, I want him to, this is what I think we should be watching for him or whatever, so let's watch it together and laugh about it or whatever. So I don't know, but yeah, I thank her for that. That's the reason why I became a writer. So so there you go.
Well, that will wrap it up for this week with Dan and Saran and Mike's take on Hollywood.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.